Being with us, and good morning to you. So the government have now launched and begun this one in, one out scheme. They say that it will impact the gangs and stop people coming across on small boats.
Well, look, let's hope. It's not actually 1 in, 1 out. It's 17 in and 1 out, even within the terms of what the Home Secretary is outlining today. But look, let's just rewind for just 1 second. Nobody should be coming to the UK from France. France is a safe country. Together with the United Kingdom, they gave the world human rights. No one's under fear of their life. No one's under fear of prosecution. Yes, they have some interesting menu choices sometimes, but really, nobody needs to be crossing illegally using the small boats from the UK to France. And you know what? If each of those small boats was carrying a French artwork looted from one of their national museums, I rather think the gendarmes would do a better job at puncturing those dinghies. So we don't need to be here. If the government was more robust, the first thing the Home Secretary did when she came into office, very proudly, was cancel the Rwanda deterrent scheme. That was a return scheme, and that would have been 100% of people who arrived returned. That would unquestionably have destroyed the business model of people smugglers. I think, most people, if you say, look, you can have a 90 to 95% chance of winning the lottery, maybe there's a 5 or 6% chance that you'll be returned, but 90 to 95% chance you can come over, you can cross, the Home Secretary will allow you to stay here on a life of benefits, then I think most people will continue to do that. And that's why this scheme will fail.
That's more than enough. They're not necessarily coming here to be on a life of benefits. Many of them will end up working and paying into the economy. The Rwanda scheme, as you know, never got off the ground. You called the election before it was even tested.
Well, the Home Secretary cancelled it.
Well, we're not going to litigate the Rwanda scheme, Andrew, are we? But we can talk about is the fact that this government have managed to get a deal with France. You said that France is a safe country. It's been a safe country for decades, a safe country for 14 years under the Conservative government. You guys couldn't get a deal.
Well, look, it's not much of a deal. I mean, let's travel optimistically and see whether even the 50 a week actually get returned. It was well rumoured that France were pretty sceptical about this in the first place. And, of course, it's a good deal for France. It's one out. They actually get to have the same number of people leaving France as they do before. So it's a good deal. The test of this deal, in its own terms, is whether it's successful in providing a deterrent effect. Yep. And my simple mathematical point is if you're only returning 50 a week, that doesn't even get you to Monday lunchtime some weeks in terms of the number of people crossing. The number of people crossing in small boats has increased to its record highest level. We've had the highest number of arrivals under this government since the Norman conquest. So within its own terms, this scheme will fail. And this is a government that cancelled the proper deterrent scheme, the Rwanda plan, on its first week in office.
We can't litigate that.
I'm not litigating it, but they cancelled it. It was there. And the agreement, the treaty was in place with Rwanda.
Yeah, but there are people within your own party that were very sceptical about it and described as a gimmick. People high up in the.
It was bogged down by the courts. But,
it certainly wasn't. It never got off the ground, and you never got to test it because you called the election before it could actually start. Look, I think it's accepted that France could do more, but there was a lot of money given to France. Was there a failure by the Conservative government previously to build relationships properly with the French government to get them to do more? The Labour government now will say this has been the work of trying to repair the damage that you guys did with those in Paris.
No, look, I mean, you were the one that said you don't want to litigate the past, so I don't want to go back to the past. Look, if the government, if this succeeded and France either stopped every boat leaving, as I contend is within their power, or the government was willing to do whatever it took, including things like leave the ECHR, in order to return all illegal migrants to France. Completely separate discussion about legal migration, but everybody coming across in a small boat is crossing illegally. That doesn't need to happen. My point is that this scheme is just not the scale of the challenge. Yep. This scheme is just tinkering around. There was a better scheme on the table that the Home Secretary cancelled. This scheme, 50 a week, it's neither here nor there. It won't deter.
I've changed my mind. I'm going to give you the chance to talk about Rwanda. Would you bring the Rwanda scheme back if you were in power?
If we could agree that with Rwanda, for sure. I mean,
that was the courts that were stopping you. The Rwanda accepted.
Correct, and it had worked its way through the courts. It took a long time, if you remember, through both the House of Lords and then through the courts. But that scheme was ready to go. It had taken too long, I agree, but that was to do with the court and legal system.
So you go back through that process again, would you?
That is a good scheme that would break the gangs. Everyone agrees. The Home Secretary and I and my colleagues agree that you have to break the gangs. This is an economic model. It's people smuggling, and the people crossing are paying thousands of pounds to do so. So you have to do whatever it takes. Now, there's other legal remedies to do that. Things like the ECHR allow better removal of foreign offenders. But if the Rwanda scheme was one example, but an example that would be effective in genuinely doing that, and it's something Australia did 12 years ago. So although it sounds relatively novel to your viewers, it is obviously now what the Home Secretary is now emulating. I just don't think it's going to work at scale, and it's something that the Australians have done, something the European Union have actually done as well.
Well, they're trying to work out that deal with Italy and Albania. The Australian deal was to stop boats and send them off to an island that wasn't far away, not send them to an East African nation. But the ECHR point, Andrew, is that now Conservative policy that you will be leaving the ECHR? It's rumoured that it's going to be announced later this year. Is that you're going to tell us that it's happening?
I'm certainly not going to tell you that it's happening because there's some hard yards of work to be done. I would support leaving the ECHR. That's my position. But there may be other aspects to it. What we've seen over time, and this has happened in other domains, is adventurism by the courts, looking around, looking at different pieces of international law, charters, treaties, as well as some homemade, judge-made law. And so the review that's going on is looking much broader than just the ECHR, and I think quite rightly, because I'm not a legal expert, and saying, you can't... I mean, we've had enough, right, of politicians just talking about slogans, smash the gangs or whatever.
Stop the boats was your one.
I didn't say that. When governments come forward with plans, and that is quite true of the next Conservative government, at the next election, we need credible plans. And if that needs to come out of the ECHR, but also 2 or 3 other changes to the legal system, then that's a proper plan, rather than just sort of the sugar rush of me saying to you, ECHR, and then it'll all happen.
Why not work from within the ECHR, a treaty that we helped set up, a process that we began as this country, as Britain? Why remove ourselves entirely and put ourselves in the same category as Russia and Belarus? Why not work within it and try and make it better? You know that there is some support for that within Europe.
Well, there's growing support for that. I agree. So let the experts decide whether it is possible to reform from within. My own experience is that a combination of the ECHR's approach combined with the way that we've seen British tribunals, the immigration tribunals, has taken it to a very high watermark. Let's see if that can be put back in its box, but if not, then leave the ECHR and look at all of the other ways in which British courts are effectively frustrating the democratic will of the people, whether it's a Conservative government or even now a Labour government. You've still got a court system that is at odds with what the vast majority of your decent viewers are sitting at home thinking, look, I just want a politician that's going to solve this problem. I'm not against all immigration. I'm certainly not against migration, people coming from persecution. But I need our democratically elected politicians to actually hold the wheel and be in charge of this, rather than be constantly told it's some court, whether it's a foreign court or a British court, that's frustrating that purpose.
OK. Andrew Griffith, Shadow Business and Trade Secretary. Good to speak to you this morning. Thanks for being with me.
Thank you.
Thank you.